In this video, I'm going to go over some last bits of string processing that you probably want to know about, and then go through an example from the book that I think will be helpful for you in developing Lab 4 and Program 2. So to start off, I'm going to cover some of the things that we didn't get to in previous videos. So we saw that if we just try to compare strings using equals equals, we're going to get some unexpected behavior because we're then comparing memory addresses. So what we're going to want to use is string compare. We can find a reference for this and all the other string library functions on Tutorials Point linked here. And so we can see that the syntax for string compare is it's going to return us an int, and we'll get to that in a second, but we pass in one string and another string, and we can also see that these are actually character pointers, so they're pointing to the front of our character array, and that explains why just trying to compare them directly using equals equals or less than or greater than is going to compare the addresses because they're pointers, but we want to compare the actual strings. String compare will return to us a 0 if our two strings are equal. It'll give us a value less than 0 if our first one is less than our second one, and as you might expect, greater than 0 if the second one is bigger than the first one. So this is how we compare strings, and we will see an example of this in the larger example later. So I'm just going to get back to the page for the lecture. Next, I want to talk about gets and fgets. So in the first string video, we saw how scanf can read in a string for us, but if there's any white space in the string, it's only going to read up to the white space. So if we want to read an entire line that contains white space, we can use, one option is to use gets, and our other option is to use fgets. So in this program, my goal is just to prompt the user to enter their full name, which I assume is going to have a space in it, and I'd like to save it into the string str, save the name, and then I'm just going to print it. So if I use gets, I actually have the wrong, this is the syntax for fgets. So if I use gets, all I need to pass in is the name of the string that I want to save the result from. So this is like even simpler than scanf, which is very nice. So my gets, all I do is pass in, it's going to be a pointer, of course, but our string variables are already pointers. Pointer to variable, I guess, pointer to location where I want to store the string. So str is exactly that. And so let's take a look at how this works. I'll compile this. And one thing that we'll notice as soon as I do this is that we get a warning about gets. So in this class, you're welcome to use gets if you want, but this warning is telling us that in, I guess, modern C, we shouldn't generally use gets. But it's in the book, so we can use it if we want. So, but we'll also learn about fgets. Oh, I forgot to run it. So we compiled it, and now we can run it, and it's asking me for my full name, so I'll put it in, and we can see it saved my full name. But if I'd use scanf and I just had one single string, it would have only saved Lucy. So now let's see what this looks like if I use fgets. So for fgets, I need to pass in, and we might as well actually just take the Tutorials point here, which I'm basically showing you there's a lot that you can do with strings, and we're not going to cover everything in these videos, so definitely be willing to Google things, take a look at the book if you have access to it, and also post in the Slack if you have questions. Yeah, if you're trying to do something and it feels like you're making it really complicated, maybe you're just missing a string library function or a standard library function that you could use. So fgets is going to take in, again, our pointer, but then we also need to pass in the maximum number of characters to bed. So we have pass in pointer, max characters, and so for us that's usually just going to be whatever size we use to initialize our string variable. And then also we need to put in our input. I guess, what does this call? Oh, okay, the input stream, we'll say. So the way I could do this is, so I've got my str, my max character is here, I'll say 50 because I said 50 up here. And then if you want to read from the console, you'd pass in standard in. I believe perhaps you can, okay, yeah, you can also pass in your pointer to your file. So if you use fgets in the lab or the program coming up, then you could pass in your file pointer here. But for demonstration, we'll just use standard in. So this is a pointer to standard in, I assume. So let's take a look at what happens here. We're going to compile, and now we don't have any warnings anymore, so that's nice. And again, I will enter my full name. And so we notice that when we're using gets, we didn't have this extra new line, but when we use fgets, we have an extra new line here. And so a difference for us, just practically in writing our programs right now, gets strips new line characters, but fgets does not. So that's why when we have a new line character at the end, and so after we print whatever's stored in str, we print a new line, but when we run fgets, we store a string that has a new line character at the end, and so we end up with two new lines. So that will just be something to be aware of when you're deciding whether to use fgets or gets. And then the last thing I wanted to cover is converting a string to a number. And so to do that, we can use SSScan. And again, I just want you to make sure that you have a reference, because I'm not going to get everything down in this video. But SSScan is going to allow us to use the same format strings that we've been using with scanf and fscanf to convert variables. So let's actually just copy this over and we can take a look at an example. Maybe I'll even paste it in here. Oh, I always forget. So first I'm going to delete this, and now I'm going to copy. Okay. So one other thing is, so definitely gets and fgets are in the standard library. So you're going to need to include std lib.h. I assume that scanf is as well. Yeah. I think that's what it means by C library function, is that it's in the standard library. But if I guess we can check. Let's just delete this and let's see if it compiles. Okay, I guess we didn't need, maybe we didn't need to include the standard library here. Okay, so let's take a look at what this code is doing. So it looks like first, so we see a use of string copy to assign a string to variable DTM. Remember, we can't use the equals sign as an assignment operator when we can't use the assignment operator for strings. So we instead use string copy, and then what are we doing here? So scanf is taking in our pointer to our string, which is a char array. So that's what DTM is, right? And then it's going to take our format string. So this is saying that in what's stored here, we have a thing I want you to read as a string, then we have some white space, then we have a thing I want you to read as a string, then some white space, then a thing I want you to read as a integer, then some white space, and then a thing I want you to read as an integer. And then we have however many pointers to variables that we want to assign, right? So I want to assign this first string that you see to the variable weekday, so we can see weekday and month were initialized up, or were declared up here, and both day and year were declared up here as ints. And so again, we get another example of our strings are pointers, so weekday and month don't need my address of operator, but day and year do need address of operators. And so here scanf is converting. Now we can, after this, maybe I won't print all these. I'll just say let's say I just wanted to print day, just to prove that it is, maybe I'll say day plus 1, because so day was 25, because I read it as an integer here, and now I'm going to print day plus 1, and I can really only do this because it's an integer. So I can add 1 to it, so it should be 6, and the compiler won't get mad at me because I'm passing an integer. This is an integer, so it's fine calling printf on that. And oh, we got 26. Oh, haha. I read it as 5, but it said 25. So we do expect it to be 26. So that is how you can use the familiar syntax of scanf to convert strings into other types. And you can also take a look at the tutorials point if you want more information there. So the final thing I want to show is going to be a great resource for the upcoming assignments. So I think, oh, I already have it here, but you can always take a look at most of the files that I edit during these videos and additional ones as well in the public directory in, let me move this over, in examples, and then we're in chapter 8 right now, which is the chapter about strings. And then what we're going to look at is figure 8.14. And so I already have it, so this is just going to overwrite it, but I'll just do it. And so now I have this And so this comes from the book, and what this program does, we can take a look at it. So it's going to take in a list of applicants, and then it's also going to provide an alphabetical ordering of those. And the way that it's actually going to achieve that is through an array of pointers. And so this is just going to be a really good demonstration of pointers and similar to your upcoming assignments. So let's see what this actually does by running it. We'll call it app, how about? And it uses gets, which is fine. So like I said, the book uses gets, you can use gets, that's totally fine. So now let's run it. We called it app, and so it asks us for a number of applicants, let's say 3, and I'm just gonna follow what the book does because I feel like that's easier. So the book has them all. So one thing I forgot to mention is when we compare strings, it matters if they're uppercase or lowercase, because the characters are really ASCII characters, and so the underlying value of a capital letter, I think, is actually less than the version of it that's lowercase. But you're going to get unexpected behavior if you're mixing capital and lowercase, so it's best if your strings are just all capital or all lowercase if you want to be comparing them. So that's why in this example they're all just going to be uppercase. Okay, so what this program does, it gets those names from us, and then it both prints the same order that we gave them, so this was the order we gave, and it prints the alphabetical order. And so the way that it does this, it doesn't actually make 2 different arrays of strings. It actually makes an array of pointers. So let's take a look. Oh, if caps lock is on when you're in Vim, the weird things happen. So always watch for that. Okay, so we can see we have 2 function declarations. This is alphabetically first. And I might not get through this entire file, and so you might need to take a look at it on your own, but it is available for you in the public folder. And so this is selection sort on strings. So again, great resource because you're going to need to sort in upcoming assignments. So this is what we're going to read in. And then here, this is a list of pointers. And so instead of actually copying over those names, we're just going to alphabetize the pointers. So here we can see this is the part of the code that gets us those applicants. This, I think, is just to make sure that we don't get any extra characters. I think it's kind of unnecessary. Let's see what happens when we delete it. Then we don't need this one here. Okay, now I'm just going to try running this again. Let's say I only had 1. Oh, so I think that actually, unfortunately, now, well, luckily there's still a copy of it. So I'm going to copy it back over from public. Examples. This is chapter 8, figure 814. and I'm going to copy it over. So I've now realized that what this is doing is this is helping us actually enter something to gets. And so there's a hint that to use get care, but I guess this also works because when we remove this, our gets, I think, is just trying to consume what's already there, kind of like we had the same issue with scanf and reading characters, I think, or at least a similar issue. So you can take a look at this if you're running gets and it's not letting you actually input anything. You might need to write some. You could potentially take a look at this code, or you can also just do, I think you can just do get care, and it'll read a single character, which might be a new line or something. And then that might solve your problem. But this little piece of code, anyway, might help if you're not able to input anything. So here we see a use of gets to get those full lines, right? Just like we saw in the previous example. And now what's happening here is that we're actually, as we can see in this comment, this is copying only the addresses. And then we're running selection sort on the array of addresses, not on the array of character strings. And then also in this program, we see another example, like we said in another video, of these justification using the minus and then some number of spaces that you want for justification. And so down here we have some function definitions that are used in the program. And for the sake of time of this video, I'm actually going to stop it here. But if you are looking through this and having trouble understanding what's going on, I guess first off, try to use this as a possible template for your Lab 4. But if you are struggling, then definitely just come to class and ask questions, and there might be some more videos going through this stuff or similar examples.